Well, over to you, Beck. A very special story to mark today's 9/11 anniversary.
Thank you very much. Well, 63-year-old Yvonne Kennedy was supposed to be on her dream trip across the US celebrating her well-earned retirement. But on the morning of September 11, 2001, as the Aussie mum of two boarded American Airlines Flight 77 from Washington to LA, fate had other plans. 20 years on, the memories of that day are still vivid in her family's mind. I spoke to Yvonne's son Simon about the very public and tragic loss of his mother and his journey to finding happiness again.
Engine 101, get it crack over there in the Pentagon, is that correct?
It was late at night in Australia when that first plane hit the Twin Tower. What were you doing at that time and where were you?
I'd been out with friends, workmates, having a few drinks, and I went to bed having not watched the news at all. So I'd sort of dozed off. So I didn't even know what was going on over in the States until my brother called me from London, where it was the morning and he was seeing the news there, and he called me with concerns for Mum, because he knew she was on holidays over there. He rang and said, look, there's some planes that have hit some buildings in the US. I'm a bit worried about Mum. Can you check her itinerary and see where she is and where she's meant to be? And that's what got me out of bed. And I remember saying to my brother, she's supposed to be getting on flight 77, American Airlines. And I remember him saying, I think that's one of them. And it was.
Were you just hoping and praying that for whatever reason your mum did not get on that American Airlines Flight 77 on that morning?
Yeah. I mean, you always hope that what you see on paper in black and white isn't the case when the result is what we found it out to be. We called the airlines, we called the hotel she was staying at, we called everywhere to see if there was a chance that that was not the case, that she didn't get on that plane. So there was a point along the line where I just knew. I can't recall exactly what moment that was, but logically I knew she had gotten on that plane without someone telling me for sure.
While the whole world was mourning, you were going through agonising grief, an individual grief. How did you process what was happening around you, but also a son grieving the loss of their mum? You were just 26 years of age.
Look, I mean, I'd known grief before. We'd lost our father when we were young, so I knew that, but this was different. I mean, it was the woman that brought us up skillfully, two young men, and loved us dearly, and she was an incredible example. So losing her was bigger. It was a lot bigger. And I think I just tried to ignore the news for a long time there. I didn't go near newspapers. I didn't turn on the TV for a while. I mean, I spent the first 24 hours as it was unravelling with the television on, just staring at it in my pyjamas. And it got to a point where I'm like, I cannot watch this anymore. I have to avoid this.
Do you ever think about what your mum would have gone through, and they knew that they were being taken over and they knew that terrorists were in charge of the plane?
I try not to think over it too much, but I do know the kind of woman my mum was, and she was a helper. I mean, she was with the Australian Red Cross for over 30 odd years, and one thing she did was rush in to help people. And I genuinely think that if people had been hurt in the process on that flight, that she would have been there helping them. That's what I imagine. She probably was scared, but that wouldn't have stopped her.
America and its allies went into Afghanistan. It was the war on terror. It was the immediate response after 9/11. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the wars that happened on the back of 9/11, Afghanistan I get, Iraq was a fraud which was absolutely offensive to me, to my family. I remember the world leaders like Bush and Howard saying that they were doing that for us, and that was one of probably the most offensive political moves as a 9/11 family member that I could ever imagine. It hurts to be used like that and to have the memory and legacy of our mum used for political purposes, and that was hard to watch.
Your two children, Adelaide and Fletcher, have obviously never met their grandmother. What do you tell them about her?
Oh, look, I mean, that is one of the greatest sadnesses, is that my kids won't get to know their grandmother, who would have loved them so much. Oh my God, she would have adored them. And you know, I tell them that she was a funny woman. I tell them that she was a good woman and gave a lot to other people, and that I tell them that she would have loved them so much, because I think that's probably the most important thing to hear.
She sounds like a wonderful person.
She was awesome. She really was awesome.
I'm sure she was. And we thank Simon once again for sharing the story of his mum with us. Now, with international travel currently paused and Greater Sydney entering its 11th week in lockdown, Simon is unable to mark the anniversary as he had planned. So he's asking all those who can to go and pay tribute to the Australians lost on 9/11 at this beautiful tree planted in their memory. It's in the Royal Botanic Gardens in Sydney.